up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast, Thursday edition, always featuring Phil Perry. How's my guy?
Doing great, doing great. How are we?
Good. Busy week. Let's jump right into it. We got a lot on this pod. We have superlatives, camp superlatives coming up at the end, but we also have to break down what we saw with the Carolina Panthers and the Patriots, and carrying the day, of course, unfortunately, with a fracas. That's the plural of fracas, brouhaha. There were those two. Tom, just cut to the chase and listen to Matt Slater talk about it.
Well, that's certainly not how we do things. Things happen. You have to hit the reset button. You move forward. You try to get better. I mean, like I said, football players. We're not MMA fighters.
All right, for you guys who listen to the pod, we're going to try and tighten things up and move more quickly. So watch this. Phil, I'm all for the aggressiveness and the jostling, but this whole thing was counterproductive. And three reasons why for me. It wasn't organic to the play on the field. There was some shit talking that precipitated the first Christian Wilkerson fight. There was posturing that precipitated the second Christian Wilkerson hit-inspired fight. There was a jumping on the sidelines. This stuff didn't happen in the course of play with the guys involved on the field. It was ancillary stuff. So it felt like chest puffery. It wasted time. And to me, it shows how far removed the Patriots are from the way, quote unquote, they do things around here. Now, that changes every year anyway, but I just think that it was very much a time suck. And it wasn't really, it was more ego-driven, tougher than now, bullpens empty and posturing than it was, hey, good physical play.
I disagree with you almost across the board.
All right.
Almost all the way across the board. The hit that injured Christian Wilkerson started the first fracas.
Yep. Wait, I'm talking about Tuesday as well.
Yeah, that one was, I guess, more sparked by something that was said, but that really was, I thought, something that had built up because the Panthers were kind of taking liberties with what was happening at the ends of plays, throwing an extra shoulder here, a little more physical than the Patriots would like there. And you could say, well, the Patriots need to just kind of buck up and be okay with that kind of thing. And you would have a point, I think. But, then it was the Dietrich Wise hit on McCaffrey that started the whole, what ended up being a stomping of Dietrich Wise over by the fan area there, which was just wild. So I know what you're saying. At some point, it does get so out of hand that it's like, there is certainly plenty of chest puffing going on. In fact, at one point, after Wilkerson got hurt and the Patriots went over to the Panthers bench area to start something, one of their defensive linemen, I'll have to go back and check my notes to see which one it was, sort of a reserve defensive lineman, just was doing this to Jonathan Jones. As he was walking towards him. This guy's probably 350 pounds. Jonathan Jones about 180 probably. I don't know. I'm probably not giving him enough credit there, but about 100-pound difference between those two, and one guy just bullying another. So there was plenty of that. I don't mind it. I don't know how much time they lost, Tom. These were long practices. I feel like the fights extended the practices.
The hangover from the fights that, you had ratcheted up intensity for a play or two, and then it just didn't, it settled. We have embraced the Rodney Harrison physicality of practices. We have embraced Julian Edelman and Stephon Gilmore going at it during practices in Gilmore's first year. So is that hypocritical? No, the difference in those was it was a hit and then an immediate dust up between the protagonists who were immediately involved and the people around them. In this, it was, and I'm not saying the Patriots are at fault. Phil, you're right. I mean, it was excessive by the Panthers in trying to send some kind of message when it's just passive aggressiveness. Oh, we're going to see how much we can get away with. We're going to keep at it. We're going to keep at it. And then when you get pissed, we're going to act like we're aggrieved. That's my take on things. Do you think this bleeds over into an undisciplined, lack of poise Patriots team? I do think to an extent it hints at, hey, these guys, if you're Matt Slater, you're going to look around and say, some of these guys lose their minds when stuff goes cuckoo. We need to button it up. What do you think?
I'm not sure they really feel that way. I thought
Okay.
Slater's post-practice demeanor was very telling. This is
Mhm.
somebody who, if he felt as though his team was doing a little bit too much on that end, I think
Right.
he would tell us. I think he would outright say it. We got to be more mature. We got to be able to pick things, pick it up and move on, and not let our emotions get the best of us. I feel like we have heard him say things like that before, but that really wasn't the case. He was mad. And even before Wilkerson got hurt, and that was the thing that was bothering him primarily, even before that happened, he was getting roughed up after a special teams play. And I turned to you, I said, is that Slater? Is Slater jawing at someone right now? When is that? Very rarely happens. We've seen it occasionally during a game, but for a guy who's been in the league as long as he has, the number of times that's happened, you could count on one hand. So
it's Lady Bing. He's the Lady Bing award winner.
He is. He's won the sportsmanship award. He's won the Bart Starr award. I mean, he's won every classy award that there is pretty much in the NFL, and deservingly so. And so when I see him on the field act the way he did, when I see him after practice act the way he did, when I see, again, Wise, I don't excuse them. I'm not saying the Patriots are all on the right. Kendrick Bourne shouldn't be throwing punches on Tuesday. Dietrich Wise shouldn't be knocking Christian McCaffrey practically into the bleachers.
A quick 20 on Dietrich Wise just so people can understand. Phil and I over the years have watched Dietrich Wise. He's a very good player, but he also runs like he's in a scuba suit sometimes, and he does not change direction. He definitely hit Christian McCaffrey near the sideline, almost at the sideline, and drove him out of bounds. And that's one of the best players in the league. You can't do that. But there's a part of me that looks at that video that we've seen fans take and go, I don't know if he was stumbling or really trying to do it.
Yeah, right? It sounds like he was, and I wasn't watching him as closely before that.
But he was agitated.
It sounds like he was agitated earlier in the practice. Soon after the Wilkerson hit, Paul Perillo, our buddy from Patriots.com, said he was looking for trouble. So I don't excuse that, but
he is clumsy.
To see the reaction after. And we saw an angle of the video where he's on the ground and there are multiple Panthers, it looks like, trying to kick him while he's down. And there are Patriots players there too. And I actually give some of them credit, because the Patriots players who saw this happening, instead of
going bananas,
again, taking it up another notch, it was more, let's break this thing up. I can't speak for everybody, but that was the angle of the video I saw. There was another thing that we could see from afar, which was, as that was happening, players from the adjacent field sprinting over to see what's going on, and it's all Panthers. And the Patriots are still staying where they're supposed to be, ostensibly staying, because I'm sure Bill Belichick had said something to them, to the effect of, let's not do this. And Tom, I just think there's a level of respect, clearly, that the two coaches garner. And Matt Rule, God bless him, he has, since the time he took the job, said that discipline will be one of the founding pillars of the culture that he builds in Carolina. And yet you can Google undisciplined in Panthers, and a number of stories will come up going back to last summer, going back to last December, penalties. Like, this is just, I think, part of who they are. And so I think the Panthers came looking for a fight. And I think I like the fact that the Patriots sort of stood up for one another. I think that was actually a good thing. I think it actually gave them a little bit of energy on Tuesday. Wednesday, I think you're right. It felt like the immediate aftermath provided sort of like a muted practice setting.
It is interesting to hear Rule, when we spoke to him afterwards, he was pissed at his players, speaking specifically about Kenny Robinson. Is that the dude's name?
Yes.
Kenny Robinson, who had the scrap with Wilkerson on Tuesday, was the individual involved in the thud, which is a less than full contact period in the kickoff, in which Wilkerson, I still don't understand how he got knocked out. The Patriots were kicking off. Robinson took on the block. All accounts say that was a clean portion, but somehow Wilkerson got his noggin rung and ended up in the concussion protocol, and signaled, as Matt Slater said, that you could tell, if you're somebody who plays in the league or watches football, you can tell when somebody is knocked out. And Robinson stood over him, and Matt Rule said, yeah, something like that happens, we should be helping people up, not standing over them. So a level of embarrassment for Rule in the way his team comported itself. But again, I'm just talking about the counterproductivity of it. And when I see benches emptying and dugouts emptying, just a global observation, the NBA shit needs to bleed into all sports. I'm tired of watching bullpens just empty because, if I'm sitting there eating my sunflower seeds and I see somebody going to the mound and I know nothing's going to happen and I'm 100 yards away, the only reason I'm running out there, so I'm not the only guy still sitting in the bullpen chewing sunflower seeds. Come on. If it's all for show, don't do it. If you mean it, go. Fracas in center field, get out there. Start just, windmilling, but be that as it may. Let's get to the football, Phil. Over the 2 days of joint practices, we both agreed progress from last week. Give me the skinny on what you saw from the Patriots offense against the Panthers defense over the 2 days.
Very focused on the passing game. I'll say that. By my count, with the Mac Jones-led offense, you had, up to dozens of plays they ran in competitive team periods. I would say 10 competitive runs. I would also say none of them very good, but it felt like that was not the focus these last 2 days. It was really about the passing game, and it was much more about the downfield passing game than we had seen all summer. And so I think that's a good thing for the Patriots. They opened things up in a way that they really hadn't previously in camp. And I thought the results in general, compared to what we had seen previously, were positive. Now, I thought Wednesday's passing game practice was much more up and down than Tuesdays, and I felt like the offensive line was a bigger issue on Wednesday. But Tom, it did at least tell me through 2 days you could see another team, see starters on another team, and have a representative passing game and put together representative, competent drives, which we really hadn't seen in full pads to this point. So that's why I feel like this was progress these last 2 days.
Yeah, it went from F-, and I'm sure that the Patriots would agree with F- from the prior week when they literally couldn't make a yard or complete passes or even throw passes without having the plays aborted, to what I would say was a B on Tuesday and maybe a C on Wednesday. And Mac Jones, when we asked him about it, what's the difference? He seemed to indicate it was the offensive line. Not that he said the offensive line sucked last week. He said, all I need is room to step up, and then I can do my job and take care of things. That was his initial thing. And then he started speaking generally. But when you say that first, I'm hearing that. What, Phil?
And I agree with you. And I think that really was the case on Tuesday. I mean, some of the downfield throws to Aguilar drew a long defensive pass interference, a couple to Devontae Parker that went really well for them. Ty Montgomery had a catch down the sideline. And then for whatever reason, on Wednesday, I felt like that wasn't there, especially in like the hurry up period at the end of practice where you and I both noticed, man, there's another throw off his back foot. There's another throw off his back foot. Is he actually getting pressured because we're 200 yards away and we can't really tell? Or does he just think he's about to get pressured? So it felt like it was, back to what has consistently been the problem through camp, all eyes on the offensive line. Good day for them on Tuesday, not as good on Wednesday in terms of protection.
And aside on that, I wonder if David Andrews' injury, he's got a cast on his, is it his left? Right. Either way, he's got a cast on a hand. Might be right. Cast on his right hand, and he got dinged a little bit. James Ferentz was in. So I wonder if it was some of that along the offensive line. But should the offense play Friday night? I can't stand the conversation that because there were practice fights, the Patriots shouldn't put their starters on the field on Friday night. I mean, it's youth football level conversation. This is professional football. Guys lost their minds. They go on the field, they get flags, they get fines and everything else in professional football. That's not going to happen. You don't sit people down because you're afraid somebody's going to punch them in the side of the head with whatever. But should they play? Oh, there were fights. Everybody's staying in. You guys are grounded. You can't.
I do understand, though. The one thing I do understand is not wanting to get the quarterback hurt. And so that, to me, I said this last night on Early Edition, if Andrews, and you mentioned Andrews, I actually just pulled up a picture. I took a picture of him a few days ago. It looks like it's the first two fingers on his left hand. So not the hand that he snaps with, but it looks like that's where the cast was. And then he left practice. It was very late in the practice, so it wasn't like he dealt with a serious injury, it looked like, of any kind. but he did leave the practice late. He came out of that hurry up period. If he's not healthy enough to play, Tom, on Friday, I'm not sure I'm playing Mac Jones, because that's how poorly I think the week went for James Ferentz. And you replace Ferentz with your best, or you replace your best communicator with Ferentz. I think Ferentz understands what's going on. He's been in the system for years. I just don't think he's physically able to, if they see Carolina starters, like, hold up. And so that really, I would say, is not really worth running Mac Jones out there for a couple series.
I mean, that's a really chilling prospect. If we've talked a lot about play calling and transitions on offense, but one of the really chilling things about the Patriots' fortunes is they don't really have an offensive line right now that Phil or I would say, hey, they're clicking on all cylinders, even with their top 5 guys in there, and their depth signals massive drop-offs in some spots, massive drop-offs. So a great strength of the New England Patriots has been its offensive line, and right now it's tenuous, to put it mildly, very, very tenuous. Defensive performance over the 2 days, Phil. I think this is a real bright spot, and we're going to hit that in the superlatives a bunch, I think.
We are. So we won't go too far into it. Do you look at this, though, and say, oh, it's Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold in an offense that's really not very good? So it's hard to tell.
I don't, because even on some of the one-on-one individual drills where I was watching the cornerbacks just lock guys down and just be as if they had telepathy as to what some of the routes were. Even when the throws were ass, even if they were good throws, they weren't going to be completed. Those guys were on everything, and I just thought they looked really good. Really good.
I do. I'm with you. I value the reps on DJ Moore or Robbie Anderson, who's a starting caliber NFL receiver, or the reps in coverage on Christian McCaffrey. So you're right. I think there was plenty to take away, and those guys played well. They deserve some credit.
Yep, bunch of it. So building on a Thursday performance by some of the players and a good camp by a number of rookies and second-year players. Really, really a bright spot, which we're going to hit in the superlatives about the Patriots for 2022. It's a big deal. Offensive play calling I have on here. Let's do a drive-by on that. What are you feeling? More and more suspicion that what we talked about earlier in the spring, that Bill Belichick is the fail-safe, might happen, right?
It seems that way. For him to be really involved offensively, the practices, and it sounds like Panthers people believed that he was calling plays during the hurry-up periods of practice the first 2 days. I still feel as though, Tom, that they might not know where they're going with this to start the year, and that there really is a process that is leading to places unknown.
Right.
And so that's what I think is a little alarming. I get it. You don't want to set yourself up to fail by deciding it's got to be one way before the season starts. But you're also talking about whether it's Bill Belichick or Matt Patricia or Joe Judge. I would say Bill Belichick's the best option. If you're Mac Jones, you probably love to have Bill Belichick in your ear. But none of those guys have called offensive plays in a long time, at least, right? So I would think you would want to give reps to guys the same way you would give players reps, but that's not really what they're doing at the moment.
Yeah, and my working theory, I'll express it again, is that Matt Patricia is going to be the guy given the first opportunity to call plays, because he's called plays defensively and knows how to do it in real time and adjust. He gets the machinations and logistics of it. Joe Judge is brushing up on it and apprenticing, and he'll take over that spot when he's where Matt is, because he's more attuned with the offensive game than Matt Patricia may be. But Bill is the overlord and the failsafe. I guess we can say, when we talk about, okay, well, you don't have to declare a destination or what you ultimately want to do. If Bill's doing it, Bill's doing it. I guess you could say that, but what's the domino effect if that comes to pass? And is that the ideal that the New England Patriots and, quite plainly, Robert Kraft want to see? Wait, Mike, we didn't hire an offensive coordinator, so the coach is the offensive coordinator. And he's really good at defense, but the defense wasn't great last year. I know they look good so far, but Why is my supervisor on the floor packing boxes? Basically, if he looks down from into the warehouse. Anyway, we've belabored that enough. Superlatives. Let's get into some good. Let's get into a bunch of good. We're going to hit you superlatives. We got a few here, and we're going to try and go rapid fire. Biggest surprise, Phil, you want to go first or me?
I'll go first. I'm going Marcus Jones. This is a guy I loved before the draft, but Tom, he looks like he might be their starter in the slot, which surprises even me. You know, we thought maybe punt returner, maybe some snaps defensively, but he looks like one of their best slot corners. Had a nice pick yesterday. I was not expecting him to be this involved defensively, but he is.
Biggest surprise for me is Tyquan Thornton, another rookie, which speaks to how well the Patriots may have drafted, at least at this juncture. I thought he was going to be a wispy little project out of Baylor and not have a lot of relevance because I have PTSD from N'Keal Harry and Brandon Tate and Josh Boyce and Aaron Dobson and Taylor Price, and you keep on going if you want. But he's got a great change of speed, which if you can run a 4.1, whatever the hell he runs, a 3.7, and you can go from a dead stop, levitate in the air the way Edelman, the way Amendola, the way Troy Brown did, and then just suddenly shimmy and then cut, you're indefensible. And he's doing that. Plus he plays with physicality that a 180-pound guy doesn't normally bring, and his body control's been excellent, and his maturity's been outstanding. He's really moved into a prime role, in my opinion. You got anything on him, or can we slide to most improved? We got to get you out.
I like him a lot as well, and I just hope that he gets the reps that I think he has earned this summer, because there's a lot of veterans on this roster too. We'll talk about some of them later.
Most improved, I'm going with Marcus Jones for some of the reasons Phil expressed, but I didn't think he was going to jump up this quick as an every down corner, because it looked like Jack Jones was the boundary corner, but the interesting shuffle seems to be Marcus Jones inside, Jonathan Jones opposite Jalen Mills on the outside, Phil. Correct me if I'm wrong. And then they got some depth back there. Really a concern coming into camp that looks like it's kind of been addressed with some good scouting of some good corners.
Yeah, I'm really dying to see the Raiders practices because they'll get such a good test there across the board. Slot, outside, tight end, like that. Those defensive backs will have their hands full in Vegas, so that'll be fun to watch. My most improved guy, Tom, this might surprise you, Nelson Aguilar.
Love that.
Nelson Aguilar has just been really consistent. He had one horrible drop in the in-stadium practice that led to an interception. It clanged so hard off his chest plate that I'm pretty sure we could hear it up in the press box. And that looked like the old Nelson Aguilar, right? But he has been really consistent before that practice and since that practice. He's caught pretty much everything that you would expect him to catch. And I thought he was the best receiver on the field on Wednesday. Made a ridiculous contested catch in between 3 Panthers defenders for a touchdown. He had another great bucket throw from Mac Jones that he caught one-handed for a touchdown. He's caught everything. Mac Jones says he's as smart as a quarterback. He has come a long way, it seems like, really, since last year.
Yeah, we've seen good hands all over the place. Devontae Parker, Ty Montgomery is the third down back. Jonas Smith has quietly had what I thought was a really good red zone camp. A lot of guys that you can feel enthused about in that deep but not star-laden wide receiver core. Newcomer, I'm going Mac Wilson, Phil. Really, they wanted to be speedy. They wanted to be explosive. He's been both, and I really base it on what we saw from him last week in the preseason game. It's my newcomer of the camp.
I think we should see more of them. It's really been McMillan and Bentley who look like the top 2 linebackers. I would be willing to put Mac Wilson in place of either of those guys because I think he's been maybe their most dynamic off-the-ball linebacker. My newcomer is Devontae Parker. And we're going to get into this later, but he was in the running for camp MVP for me. I just think he's been that consistent. He makes contested catches just about every day. I think he's going to be a real red zone threat. I think anytime he gets one-on-one on the outside, Mac Jones is going to give him an opportunity. So if he can stay healthy, I think he has the potential to have a legitimately large statistical season.
Biggest disappointment for me, it's Kendrick Bourne, a guy who was really, in many ways, I thought the Patriots' best passing game player last year. Started really well in the one-on-ones. He's still got that upbeat attitude that we've loved about him, and he's enthusiastic and he's moving well. But we saw some mistakes on Tuesday. He got bounced out of a rep because his equipment was off, and he got an earful from Bill Belichick about not being ready to go. And in comes Tyquan Thornton for him, and we saw later he throws a punch, gets thrown out of practice. This is on the same day, a day after we had talked about how much he had been seemingly relegated to second-class status, which not that. He just hadn't seen the ball. Then he gets booted from practice. Then yesterday he's running with the twos most of the day. He's got to bounce back. Too good a player to be in a disappointment mode.
No doubt. And so he's the clear answer to this for me. But I will also throw in Isaiah Wynn and just say he's hurt again. He's missing time. When he was out there, I thought he was okay, but he was not great. I'm not sure he's really bought in, to use a term that Mac Jones used with us a bunch at his press conference yesterday. I'm not sure he's bought in on the change to right tackle. This guy's a $10 million player. He has not come close to, over the course of his career, being worthy of that number. I'm still surprised they picked it up for him, but it just tells you how hard it is to find starting caliber tackles. That's why he's still here, and it's why I think he's going to continue to be here, but it doesn't mean he hasn't been a disappointment this summer.
I'm going to merge these two together. We got to get Phil out of here. Biggest story and quote of the camp for me, they're going to merge together. Biggest story has been the offensive install and pivot that the Patriots are going through. Much, much, much more involved than we thought it would be. They really devoted 2 weeks of practice to this, and it was a fitful start. And the quote of the camp comes from Mac Jones, who Phil, I think, elicited it last week with a question, and Mac Jones said, "I'll get it. I always do." So,
and I can tell you, I know that's how he feels behind the scenes too. Just from people that I've spoken to who have been behind the scenes with him, he is resolute in terms of making sure that he makes this work. I think we're still waiting to see it consistently, but we've seen signs of progress. To me, the biggest story, Tom, overall is his progression. And the offensive install ties into this. The coaching ties into this. But I continue to come back to something that our buddy Daniel Jeremiah leans on a lot, which is the 3 Ps for quarterback play: playmakers, protection, and play caller. I think he has playmakers. I don't know about the other two. And so that's why I would be concerned in terms of his progression. I think we've seen him progress as a leader. I think we've seen him progress in terms of being able to use his voice, especially when you compare him this time last year versus now. So that's to be expected. But in terms of the actual play, it's been hard to tell how much he's progressed because he hasn't really been given an opportunity to show it off, because I think the line has been that bad.
That's really that's a very good take, Guy. Do you have a quote of the camp, or should we scoot to best play?
My quote is also related. I do look at that Bill Belichick quote when I asked him about his willingness to change if things aren't working. And because I think it applies to a number of different things, whether it's the offense itself, which is really what I was getting at when I asked him about it, or the play caller, or how the coaching staff is set up, or how involved he is in certain elements of what's going on behind the scenes there. So I do think he's adaptable. I do. I think he's very stubborn in other ways, but I think in terms of if he sees something not working, he will be willing to change. So when does that happen? We'll see. Maybe it doesn't.
Best play? I have Tyquan Thornton's over-the-shoulder catch on the first or second day of practice in one-on-ones. It was an absurd catch that actually had Jalen Mills applauding him down the sideline, right-hand side, dropped in the bucket, but it didn't come over his shoulder. It actually came over his helmet, and he had to descend really to his knees to allow the thing to come in. Made the catch, got jostled. Unbelievable play that made me say, oh, my God, he's not just fast. He's an acrobat.
That's a great one. I liked Marcus Jones's interception yesterday, honestly, where he tips it to himself and then picks it off. It's like a Dennis Rodman rebound at 5'8", 170 or whatever he is. He's so much fun to watch. I also just like all the Devontae Parker 50-50 grabs because he's so good at timing his jump. It feels like he is an expert high pointer of the football. Yeah, let's make that a term.
Steady Eddie. For me, it's Jacoby Myers. Period. End of story. He makes plays.
Good answer there. I'm actually going to go Matt Judon, Tom. I'm not as high on Judon as some others, but he has pretty consistently been in the backfield, whether it's against the Patriots or against the Panthers these last 2 days. It feels like just about every day, somewhere in my notes is 9 comes up with a sack. So he's been pretty good this summer.
Under the radar story, Phil, for me, it's the defensive improvement. They wanted to get faster. They wanted to be more explosive. We've seen it on the practice field. We saw it in the first preseason game. Next week, as you said, will be a big test. And secondarily to that, it's Jalen Mills and the cornerbacks. Just it's under the radar because of so much, as we always do, offensive focus. But and I'll tag another under the radar story. It looks like they had another kick-ass draft.
That's a good one because I thought Cole Strange actually played really well these last 2 days. My under the radar story is about non-Shanahan related offensive tweaks. We have seen more RPO from the Patriots this summer. It's not like it is in Miami where everything is based off the RPO. But we've heard Mac Jones say now multiple times this summer, they're taking my input, but there are some things that I've done before that I really like that we're trying to incorporate. Maybe the RPO is one of those things. And then the other little offensive wrinkle that we don't talk a ton about, but is just the usage of Jonnu Smith. They're getting very creative with him. They tried to last year get creative with him. Josh McDaniels did. I think we're going to see even more of that. It's going to be, every single game, you're going to see several different sorts of odd handoffs, end arounds, bubble passes, screens, just to make sure he gets involved.
Coach of the camp, cornerbacks coach Mike Pellegrino. You got to credit a guy who's developing rookies to the extent that they've been developed. Quickie on you. We got to get you out of here.
I like Brian Belichick for this one. I just think they're going to use so many safeties that he's got to have Phillips and Duggar and McCourty sort of all on the same page. He's getting Jabril Peppers worked in recently. He's been productive. And then 2 young guys, Josh Bledsoe and Brendan Schooler, an undrafted rookie, getting a lot of praise from Devin McCourty yesterday. Those guys look like they can play, so he gets credit for that too.
I'm giving my camp MVP, final category, to Trent Brown. It's nice to have somebody on the offense, especially on the offensive line. You can say, okay, check mark, that's all set. And he's been out there, Phil, virtually every day, every snap. Yay.
He has. I'm going to go Jalen Mills, Tom. The defense has been the better side. I think he's been arguably their best and most consistent defensive player. I don't know if I ever would have guessed that I would say that, but that's where I am with Jalen Mills. To me, he's the camp MVP so far.
Awesome stuff. Appreciate you guys. We will circle back with you after the preseason game at some juncture. Phil's got to jump on 98.5 The Sports Hub. He's out, and I have to go finish actually typing up these camp superlatives so you can see them on NBCSportsBoston.com. Mine and Phil's. Appreciate you guys. Catch you on early edition. Catch you on post-game live after tomorrow night's preseason game. Phil will be in Vegas next week. I am Boston bound, but that's okay. We got Quick Slants next week with great Hey K Adams. So see you guys. Thanks to John Henry, the Skull Crusher, for putting it all together. He is the best.